She took the job for survival, not love. She cleaned his floors, served his food, and cared for him like a daughter.
大丈夫？ちょっと。
まゆ
もうなんだ、びっくりさせないでよ。
美味しいよすごく
よかった。
But no one saw her. Not really. Until he came home. And one accidental moment changed everything. She thought love was a luxury she couldn't afford. But what if love was her only way out? Was it love, a plan, or something much more dangerous? In a house full of silence, one heart started to speak. She was just the maid, until she wasn't. Two years ago, Sumi clicked accept on a job listing that would change everything. She was only 20 back then, young, quiet, and exhausted from the weight of her family's needs. Her father had lost his job. Her mother's health had been deteriorating, and her younger siblings were still in school. She had no choice. She had to grow up fast. That's when she found this job, taking care of an elderly, wealthy man.
つぼみちゃん、
はい。
お腹が空いたんだけどご飯作ってくんない？
今洗濯物やってるからすぐ作るね。
ああ。
She packed her bags and left her small town behind to move into the home of Jacob Hall, a man in his 70s, widowed and wealthy beyond anything she'd ever seen. It was a lonely kind of work, but it paid well, and that was all she needed. At first, Sumi told herself she would only stay for a year, just long enough to save enough money to pay off her family's debts. But a year turned into 2.
できたよ。
ああ、ありがとう。美味しそうね。いただきます。
大丈夫？ちょっと。ね。
まゆ
もうなんだ、びっくりさせないでよ。
美味しいよすごく
よかった。私洗い物あるから行くね。ゆっくり食べてね。
ありがとう。
本当につまらせないで。
大丈夫
気をつけて。じゃあ。
はい。
Every day was the same. Wake up early, prepare his meals, handle his pills, listen to his groans, clean up after him, put him to bed. Repeat. She often sat by the kitchen window late at night, eating quietly, wondering if this was what the rest of her life was going to look like. Then he came back. Peter, Jacob's son. She had only heard of him through small mentions during Jacob's more talkative days. He's busy, Jacob would mutter. He travels. He doesn't care much for old men. Peter hadn't visited the house in over a year. And then, one weekend, he appeared out of nowhere with his duffel bag and calm, commanding presence. He was tall, sharp-eyed, with a quiet voice and a firm handshake. A complete contrast to Jacob. At first, they barely crossed paths. Peter was often out meetings, Jim driving somewhere in his sleek black car. But that one evening, it happened by accident. The door cracked open, and there he was.
ごめんなさい。すいません。
こちらこそ。
どうぞ。
ありがとう。帰ってきてたんだね。
あ、今日すいません、バイトを早上がりさせられちゃって。
そうなんだ。
そうです。
じゃあ、お風呂いただくね。
すいませんでした、ごめんなさい。
Her breath hitched. She stammered, flushed red, and shut the door in a panic. But it was too late. That image, his sculpted figure, his soft, startled smile, burned itself into her mind. That night, Sumi couldn't sleep. She didn't want to admit it, but something shifted inside her. For the first time in 2 years, she didn't feel invisible. Her heart beat differently now. The air in the house felt heavier, but alive.
で、ね、なんだよ、あれだよ。俺が言ってやったんだよ。
こうしろってね。でしょ？
おい、なんでわかるんだよ。
だってこの話もう3回目。さすがに覚えるよ。
ああ、そっか。こりゃまた失礼。もう覚えてちまったかな。すっかり覚えてねえや、こりゃ。
そろそろお昼寝の時間じゃない？
ああ、もうそんな時間か。ああ、じゃあ、カテドラを持ってきてくれるかな。
The next day, she avoided him, but she noticed more things. For the first time, she wondered if maybe not just money, but connection could be a way out of the life she'd been stuck in. And then, as if life wanted to test her resolve, she was here for the job, for the salary, for the sacrifices her family needed her to make. But something was changing now, and even though she tried to ignore it, her heart knew the story she came to live wasn't going to end the way she planned. She thought she came here to work, but maybe she was here for something else entirely, and that scared her. Sumi knew the line between duty and desire, but that didn't stop her from stepping closer to it every single day.
ただいま。
おかえりなさい。
ただいま。あれ？大丈夫？
寝ちゃってるよ。
そうなんですね。
いつもこの時間いっぱいやってお昼寝するんだ。
確かに。そうっすね。すいません、なんか。
全然。ねえ、これ捨てるのもったいないからさ、一緒にちょっと飲まない？
これですか？
まだ向こうにもあるし。
そうなんですか？もう大丈夫ですよ。
ね、ほら。
でもやっぱ今日その3限が休校になっちゃったんで、それの勉強しないとダメかもしれなくて。
まあちょっとだけだからね。いいじゃん、ほら。
じゃあちょっとだけ。はい。そうかよ。
息はしてる。
やっぱこの年になったら心配で。
そうだよね。
親父酒飲みすぎだよ。
もうさっきもすごかったんだから、同じ話3回もしてさ。じゃあ私お酒持ってくるからさ、バッグ置いてきたら？
そうですね。ちょっと部屋戻ります。はい。
She still fulfilled her role, but now something else had taken root inside her. She tried to act indifferent, but her heart was already racing.
婚活サイトだったんですね。いやー、知らなかったです。
何にも聞かされてないの？
はい。どこで知り合ったのって聞いても、どこでもいいだろうって。ごまかすんですよね。でも、僕めちゃくちゃびっくりしたんですよ。すっごい綺麗だなと思って。
やめてよ、綺麗とか。
いや、本当ですよ。だって、なんか全然親父と釣り合ってないじゃないですか。
そんなことないと思うけど。
もう2年とかですよね。
2年目だよ。
2年か。 きるってことですもんね。
子供か。
She wasn't foolish. She had always been a smart girl. She knew Peter came from a different world. A world where love could be mistaken for strategy. But still, she couldn't help it. He was kind to her, not just polite kind. When Jacob dozed off during a movie, Peter would stay in the room and talk with her about things that had nothing to do with illness or duty or money. Just ... life. And for the first time, she started to wonder, what if he saw me, not just as a maid, but as a woman? It was dangerous thinking, yet she didn't stop. She remembered the promises she made to herself when she first took this job: work hard, save every coin, don't get attached. But those promises started to fade, like old photographs in sunlight. She thought back to her family, still struggling back home. The calls from her younger brother asking for school fees. Her mother's voice cracking over the phone as she pretended everything was fine. She used to believe money was the only ticket to freedom. But now she thought, maybe love was another kind of escape. And if that love came with a man like Peter, stable, powerful, respectful, was that so wrong? She didn't see herself as manipulative, but in quiet moments, she allowed herself to dream. And those dreams started to whisper, if you can make Peter love you, you'll never have to struggle again. That realization shook her, because deep down, she wasn't sure if she wanted Peter's heart for the right reasons. Was it love or survival? But either way, she decided to try. It started with small things, just enough to blur the line.
大丈夫。なんでもない。
And he noticed. He started saying things that made her heart flip. She wanted to believe it meant something, that he saw her in a new light, that he felt it too.
寒い？ちょっと布団かけてないから。ねえ、お部屋行く。あ、ごめん。見えちゃったよね。
すいません。いや、別にそういう気じゃなくて。
They sat at the table, sharing bites from the same fork, laughing softly, exchanging glances that lingered just a little too long. And in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. A tension warm, dangerous, magnetic.
すいません。
お酒もちょっと持ってくる。
大丈夫です。
大丈夫。
She knew it wasn't just kindness anymore. Peter was falling for her, slowly, gently, but unmistakably. And Sumi? She was already too deep to turn back, because now she understood something terrifying and beautiful all at once. She didn't just want his heart. She needed it, not for status, not just for safety, but because in this cold, demanding house, he was the only thing that made her feel alive again. And she would do whatever it took to keep that feeling. The truth was, Sumi didn't know when admiration turned into obsession. It happened quietly, soft as the way Peter looked at her one morning while she stood by the sink, sunlight catching the edge of her cheek. Subtle as the way he started waiting in the kitchen, longer than necessary, just to talk to her. It wasn't loud or reckless, it was slow and careful. And it was working. She wasn't pretending anymore.
どうしたんですか？
さっき見てたよね。
すいません。ごめんなさい。
ごめん。言われちゃってたでしょ。
She was genuinely falling for him. And Peter, he was changing too. At first, he was distant, cordial, warm, but careful. The kind of man who'd lived too long in boardrooms and busy cities to let himself feel anything deeply. But Sumi broke through that, with kindness, with constancy, with the kind of quiet attention no one had given him in years. They looked at each other. The room was silent. The clink of the spoon against the cup, the ticking of the old wall clock, the sound of her breath. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't rushed. From that day forward, everything changed. Peter began spending more evenings at home. They ate together more often. He started confiding in her about work, his strained relationship with his father, the loneliness that came from growing up in a house filled with wealth but lacking warmth. Sumi listened always, not as a caregiver now, but as someone who mattered. Jacob, perhaps sensing something had shifted, grew moodier. He would question why Peter lingered around the house, why Sumi looked different, but Peter ignored it. He was too busy rediscovering a part of himself he'd buried for years, the part that believed love could be soft, not strategic. And Sumi? She bloomed. She no longer felt like the invisible girl from a small town. She felt wanted, important, safe. It was everything she had ever dreamed of.
開けてはいないです。
我慢できなくなっちゃった。
いや、それで今、親父もいますし、ダメですよ。
But here's the part no one tells you. When you finally get what you wanted, the real question begins. What will you do with it? Sumi didn't stop taking care of Jacob, even after everything. She still brought him his meals, still read his favorite newspaper columns aloud, still listened to his grumbles.
なんか刑事具合悪いみたいだけど大丈夫なのか。
ああ、頭痛みたい。さっきお薬渡してきたんだけど、明日もダメだったら病院行くって。
ああ、そうか。悪いな。じゃあ俺はそろそろ寝るかな。寝るね。
おやすみ。
ああ、おやすみ。
また明日。
ああ、おやすみ。
Because she wasn't here to abandon anyone. She hadn't tricked Peter. She hadn't manipulated him. She simply showed up every single day with a kind of heart that doesn't quit when it gets tired. And in the end, that's what won Peter over. Not her beauty, not her plans, but her consistency. And for the first time in a long time, Sumi stopped surviving and started living. She still sent money home, still called her mother every week. But now, she didn't cry after hanging up. Because now, when she looked beside her, she saw someone who chose her, not out of pity, not out of charity, but out of love.
ケイジ君おはよう。
あ、おはようございます。
今日いつもより早いね。
あ、まあちょっとはい。
ねえ、これよかったらお昼に食べて。
ありがとうございます。
すっごいよそよそしい。逆にバレちゃう。
あ、いや、すいません。そうですかね。
普通にしよう、普通に。
はい、普通に。すいません。ただいま。
ケイジ君おかえり。遅かったね。
And Peter? He never stopped thanking her.
今日はどうする？ご飯食べる？お風呂にする？それとも
For every coffee, every smile, every moment she stayed when it would have been easier to leave. Because in a world full of people who walk away too easily, she stayed. And in doing so, she taught them both that love isn't about who you were when you started, but who you become when someone believes in you enough to stay.
おはようございます。
おはよう。
何書いてんですか？
ん？